Let's just take a look at how we can do things with storyboards in Code and in XAML. I've got a standard Silverlight project here. I've got my Silverlight project animations. I've got the test website for that project. And I've already started to build some UI in my page.xaml. This is my UI. We have a rectangle on the left, we have a rectangle on the right, and we have a button that says run on it. And if we go and look at the XAML for that, you'll see that essentially my button down here has a click handler called onRun, and then my rectangles are called rect left and rect right for the left one and the right one. And we've also got up here a storyboard that I've started to work on. So a storyboard is a collection of animations. As you see here, we've got two animations within here. They're both double animations, but we have other animation types like color animation. But this storyboard has a name, my storyboard, and it has a target name. Now this storyboard.target name, this is a thing called an attached property, and we'll talk about that in a second. But at the moment we're targeting rect left, which is going to be the rectangle on the left, and we're specifying a duration here of 2 seconds. And then we've got two animations. One takes the opacity of that rectangle from 1 to 0 over a period of 2 seconds, and the other one takes the width of that rectangle. And notice this is using a from and to, i.e. we know where we want to start and we know where we want to finish. This is using a by, i.e. we don't know where we're starting, but we just want to reduce it by 20 nonetheless. It's more relative rather than an absolute, and those are both perfectly valid things to do. So we can get hold of this storyboard in our code behind. If we pop into the code behind, here is our onRun function, and all I'm going to do at the moment is my storyboard.begin, and associated with begin and so on, you can also see we've got pause and we've got resume. So these are kind of get it going, pause it, resume it, and then of course we've also got stop. We'll come back and look at stop in a second. But for the moment we'll just call begin, we'll press F5, and we get our test page spinning up. And we can just go ahead and click our run button, and our story should begin. Our rectangle on the left, it got a little bit narrower and it faded out. And notice an important thing about this, it stays faded out. It still is faded out at this point. Now there's a couple of ways we could stop it staying faded out, so let's just kill that. We could go and handle the completed event on the storyboard. So we can always handle the completed event. Let's say completed equals on completed, something like that. And let's just pop back to our code and write an event handler for that, on completed. And in on completed what we could do is my storyboard.stop. Okay, so we could press F5. If we manage to get that code right, then when we click on that button, we should find that after our 2 seconds, that storyboard stops and the rectangle goes back to how it was before. The alternate way of doing this without handling on completed here, let's get rid of on completed for a second, is simply to set storyboard fill behavior to either hold end, which is what we had by default, or stop. In which case, when it stops, it'll stop the storyboard. So when the completed event fires, we're automatically getting that behavior we just wrote code for a second ago, as you can see. Now, another kind of behavior we can set is the repeat behavior. So we can tell this thing to repeat, for instance, forever, in which case when we press F5 and we click on our button, we can see it fades out, pops back in, but fades out again. So you can very easily have an animation that just keeps going round and round and round until we tell it to pause or to stop. Another property we could set here, let's just cancel these two for a second, is auto reverse. So we could say we want this to automatically reverse itself. And if we go run this time, what we'll see is as we press run, this thing fades out, but then it also will come back and fade back in, and its width and its opacity fade back in as well. So we can very easily reverse the behavior of our animations. If we want to delay an animation for a little while, we could say begin time. Let's say what we want to do is delay that for 2 seconds and then start it for 2 seconds. So once again we can spin that back up, and we can see that we run, it waits a little while, and then it starts, and then of course it's going to pop back afterwards like we had before. We can also speed things up a little bit if we want to. We have a ratio for speed. Let's say speed ratio is 5.0. Let's press F5. Let's run that. We can see that went pretty quickly. So essentially what we're doing is accelerating that thing and making it speed up that way. It's worth saying that if you need more complicated sort of speed ratios, you can use keyframe animations, which are more complicated than these. You typically see them generated out of expression blend, and they can even give you linear or non-linear interpolation between the frames. You can do all kinds of fancy things in terms of controlling how things speed up from the start point to the end point with more flexibility than you'll get by just using speed ratio. Now, What's interesting about a lot of these properties that we're setting here is you can either set them on the storyboard or you can set them on the animations themselves. So at the moment we're setting them on the storyboard, but we don't have to do that. We could take these durations and so on away. Let's change the duration of this to be, I don't know, this is the opacity. Let's set this to 5 seconds. And let's set the width to be pretty quick. So let's say duration equals 0.00001 second. Let's try that. Let's press F5 again. And we should be able to see that our animations, one is taking quite a long time, but the width animation didn't take very long at all. And so we can control things here on the animation level themselves. And so a lot of those properties that we've already seen, we can actually go ahead and control those on these animations rather than setting them necessarily on the storyboard, which gives you a lot of flexibility. You can either control things sort of globally, if you like, for the storyboard, or locally for the animations. And if you give some of these animations names, then you can start to control these various properties from code very easily as well by just getting to the animation and then playing around with these things in code. So that's pretty simple too. Now, what we could do here is we can also take these target names and move those to the animation. So for instance, let's take these target names and let's make this animation. Perhaps we'll take the duration and put it back to this storyboard for the second. Let's say duration is 3, and we'll take the durations away down here and down here. But what we can do is take the target name. Let's say that this storyboard.target name equals rect left, and let's say that this animation's target name rather equals rect right. And then what we should see if we go run that is we've now got a storyboard, and that storyboard is targeting the 2 rectangles. So we've very easily made one storyboard that's targeting both of those rectangles without having to really do any work on that. So that's pretty cool. But what if, for instance, you wanted to change one of these storyboards to target a different element at runtime? So for instance, here we've built a storyboard which targets rect left, and if we press F5 again, we'll see that when we click on this, we're targeting the rectangle on the left. What if we wanted to write code to make this apply to the rectangle on the right? Well, let's go back to our code, and what we'll do is when you click on the button here, we'll say my storyboard dot, and we'll use set value to set what we call a dependency property. That property is going to be storyboard dot target name, the target name property, and we can set that to rect right. So what we're saying is that this storyboard now targets the rectangle called rect right. Press F5. We should see the rectangle on the right be affected by that storyboard like it is. There are alternate ways of doing this. One is to use a helper method, essentially an easier way of doing this. We can say storyboard dot set target name, give it the element which is going to be, in our case, my storyboard, and the name is going to be rect right. So that's another way of achieving the same thing. It's in fact really just a shorthand for the same piece of code, but we press F5 and it should give us the same results. Let's go do that. There we are, getting the same results. And the other way of doing it is maybe we don't even have a name for this, so we could use storyboard.set target. I mean, no, that's not the right method. Set target, and what we do is we just give it the storyboard again, my storyboard, and we pass it the object we want to set it on, which we have to name because we've got a member variable for this. This would be rect right. So we're not passing by name now, we're actually just passing the member variable. We go build, press F5, and once again we should see the rectangle on the right being affected by these things. So once again over there it is. So there's a number of ways of doing it. Fundamentally it's whether you use set target or set target name, and then there's also the question of whether you use storyboard dot, the static method, or whether you use my storyboard dot set value, the instance method. So one thing to watch out for is you probably realize that these storyboards target one thing really at a time. We can point the animations, as we saw before, at different elements, but if we look at this case here where we want these 2 animations to fire on one element, well, this storyboard is an instance. It is one thing, and so it's pointing at one target at a time. So if you wanted to have 2 of these storyboards on the go at the same time, you would need to create 2 storyboards. Either you could do that statically like this in XAML, which might be okay for 2 storyboards, but probably won't work for 52 storyboards. That would be crazy. Or you can dynamically create them from code, and then you can do what you want with them. So really, it's a question of how many of these things you want to create. Let's look at how we'd create one of these things in code just so you get a flavor of it. Okay, so let's get rid of this and we'll create our storyboard ourselves. So we'll say storyboard, new storyboard, we'll create that. And we'll set which element the storyboard is targeting. So we'll say storyboard dot set target name. That's going to be the new storyboard and it's going to be rect left. Let's do that. And then we need to go ahead and create our animation. So we'll say double animation, new animation equals new one of those. Let's go ahead and set the from and to values. So say animation dot from equals 1.0, new animation dot to equals 0.0. Let's set the storyboard target property. So this is on the new animation, and we want a new property path, which is going to be UI element dot opacity. I don't know if I need the braces in there. I might be able to get away with just opacity, but we'll work with that. Let's remember to add the animation to the storyboard. So new storyboard dot children dot add the animation that we've got, and let's do new storyboard dot begin. Now, looking at this, I have a feeling that this won't work, and the reason for that is I'm using a name up here. So in fact, instead of using set target name, which I could do, but I think if I do that I have to add the storyboard into the resources of the application, so I'd have to do another line of code to add that in. What I'll do is, instead of using the name here, let's say storyboard.setTarget on the new storyboard, and we'll pass it rectangle left, which is the one that we want to affect. So we're using a live object rather than a name. Let's go build that. Let's go press F5 and let's see if our animation spins up like we would expect it to. Okay, fine, so we get our animation just like we would expect it to. Okay, so hopefully you get the idea that we can create animations from code just as much as we can create them from XAML. It's easier to create them from XAML, but if you wanted to create, say, 1,000 animations dynamically, then you're going to have to encapsulate something like this into a routine and call it like that, rather than trying to write thousands of pieces of XAML to do that. Although you could come up with a combination of the two approaches where you load up some information from XAML and use that to create storyboards dynamically. It's a little bit more advanced than what we're doing here. But hopefully you get the idea as to how we can interact with storyboards, creating them in XAML, creating them in code, and working with them generally, targeting them at different elements, and so on and so forth.